So without further ado, let's introduce Lynn. As you heard, Lynn Sweet is going to be our instructor, and she has been doing pre-assessments since 2017 for both PlantRight and for Cal-IPC. So we're really happy that she's able to lead this discussion. So take it away, Lynn.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Sweet. I work for UC Riverside Center for Conservation Biology, and I'm also a former board member for Cal-IPC. And as Jutta said, I have experience with the pre-tool and happy to be training you today. I also want to thank especially Elizabeth Brusati for helping us with this presentation as well. She was really critical to getting this going. So thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Jutta and Alex, for being here as well. Okay, so, all right, so today we're going to be going through the pre-training process. This is the first step in you becoming evaluators for pre. And so we're going to quick introduction, go through the plant risk evaluator overview, just a high-level view at adding plants, literature review, evaluation, so you can see kind of the whole process before we delve in. We'll do a brief break if possible, if we have time, just a quick bio break in the middle, and then on to really delve into the pre-questionnaire itself, the meat of the tool, so the climate matching, the evaluation questions, and then delve into some of the important concepts that you should know in order to evaluate plants effectively, quality control, confidence, etc. Go over some tips and then move on to your next steps, which is the practice assignment, and then the next meeting. So we'll talk about that. Okay, and all right, so prior to today, you should have already looked at the video online, and that is the, sorry, I'm trying to get my annotation tool up. So that was the pre-video, and also there's the pre-review questions. We sent you a table to use, and then Alex as well had sent you a link to the formal pre-guidance, which is, it looks like this. So it's questions and then the guidance on the answers, which we'll also go over. All right, let's see, go ahead with my little tool there. Okay. All right, so a little bit first about the purpose of the tool and a brief background from Alex.
Thanks, Lynn. So as some of you may know, and many of you probably don't know, the Plant Risk Evaluator tool was designed by PlantRight in collaboration with researchers from the University of Washington and University of California, Davis. PRE is designed to be a predictive tool to predict the invasive risk of introduced terrestrial ornamental plants. The tool was tested on known invasives and non-invasives during its development, and it has come up with a 95% accurate prediction rate. The PRE tool has evolved over the years. Most significantly, improvements were made on the tool as a result of the 2017 Farm Bill project, where there were over 200 evaluations performed in a multi-state collaboration. There were some from Georgia and Texas and Missouri. I'm probably missing some states, but that was really one of the key foundational steps in the development of the PRE tool as it is today. One of the updates that it was pretty significant that they made was the 3-reviewer system for each horticultural plant evaluation, in which there is 1 reviewer from industry, from academia, and then from conservation. And this system was put in place as a quality control mechanism to ensure that we have high quality evaluation. And PRE is also used as a predictive tool for potential wildland invasives as well. And one of the partners that we've worked really closely on with that is Cal-IPC. And I'll go ahead and let Jutta tell you a little bit more about their work and their experience with PRE.
Thanks, Alex. So as Alex mentioned, we have been working closely with PlantRight to utilize the PRE tool. Cal-IPC specifically has been using the PRE tool since about 2016, since it really took off and was finalized for new species in the state of California. So we have been using the pre-tool to evaluate both ornamental and non-ornamental plants, the ornamentals in collaboration with PlantRight, and those specifically that are uncommon still in the state, for which we do not have enough information, local information about their behavior within the state of California. So that's really enhanced our ability to assess plants. Cal-IPC, just to back up a little bit, we have a large invasive plant inventory that we manage for the state of California for natural lands. It overlaps but it is distinct from the regulatory list that Bob Price, who is also on this in this workshop, is managing. So it's a great tool for our purposes, and that's about all we need to say right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so looking at the pre-tool, so this is again, online tool, as you may have guessed. You got your logins, you're able to hopefully get in there and take a look. So there are 20 pre-questions that you answer to evaluate a plant, 6 having to do with invasive history and climate matching, 4 having to do with impact on native animals and plants, 7 having to do with reproductive strategies, and 3 having to do with dispersal. And the idea is you have to answer 80% of the questions for a screen to be valid. So a lack of evidence usually defaults to a no, or it does not contribute to a high score, so thereby making it really a conservative tool. So things don't get unnecessarily ranked as invasive if they are not, or there isn't evidence for it. So 80% of the questions answers to be valid. Each question is generally yes or no, and then you put in some evidence to support your answer with each. And while you're filling out the tool, the system is combining the score for you, and you can see on the bottom right the pre-legend that will be apparent to you. And so you can see what your plant's adding up to as you go through it. And so you start by adding the plant to the database, and then you conduct a literature review, and then you do the evaluation. So that's kind of the overview there. All right, so let's go into the tool. All right, so the first step is adding or selecting the plant. And I have a screenshot here of the pre-system, and what's great is they have a lot of helpful tips that will pop up as you're going through. So let's say you go to add a plant. So a lot of the options for actually doing things, changing the database, are up at the top. So you add plant, add image, add evaluation. And then if you just want to look at lists of things, they're generally in this white bar here. So you can go ahead, and even where you are now, you could click on the list of evaluations. You could click on the list of plants and see lists. But the tool will generally prompt you if it thinks you're gonna do something you're not supposed to do. So that's great. So you confirm the scientific name, search for a plant, make sure it's not there already, and if so, add it, confirm the region you're evaluating for, add plant, and then click add image. And there are help menus as well, and Alex had some of those in her email to you, so you have those already, but how to create a plant, how to add an image and associate it with plant. So if you have any questions about anything we go over today, you can probably find the answer within those help menus moving forward. The literature review, and this is just a high-level view. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about sources later on, but essentially you conduct a literature review. You're finding information to paraphrase or quote to support your answer. So for instance, if there's a question that asks, does the plant fruit more than 3 months a year? You might find something in Missouri Botanic Gardens website, and it says produces fruits throughout the year. So you say yes, and then you put in your evidence. And generally for this, you're using databases, journals, herbaria, reports, research papers. Try to use primary literature if at all possible, as opposed to literature that summarizes other primary sources. And we'll give you a place to start later on. And then you conduct the evaluation. So this is what the start of the evaluation screen looks like. You answer the questions. For each one, you assign confidence, you assign sources, you check it over, and you submit it. And this is all done via the add evaluation at the top. And so submitting, essentially after you've finished your evaluation, on the right side, there will be these tools here. So evaluation status, so it could be in progress and it could be submitted. Essentially, those are the two you really need to worry about, and you save. Here's a look at if you did click on evaluations and you're just looking at a list of plant evaluations, this is how it looks. So on the left, you have some check marks that indicates a summary of the did it pass the pre-screen, who can view it, the pre-score, the name of the plant, the date. So a lot of information that you can check out for the plants that are already in the system. And what's cool is organization. So we've added Western IPM project to the organization list so we can quickly access all the plants that are done as a result of this grant funding program. So you could actually, that's a link, so you can click on it and get a list of all the plants evaluated there. All right. Okay, so do we have any questions in the chat, or should we pause for a second so far?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't think we have anything yet.
And we're going to go more in depth on just about everything we talked about. So, okay.
I guess I just wanted to mention to give poor Troy, who's muffled with his microphone, since he did add his information, his association in the chat. Troy Abercrombie comes to us from the Western Invasives Network in Oregon and the Oregon Invasive Species Council. So just so you all know that.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. I see a hand up.
Wow. Let's see. Was that Leah that just raised your hand?
Doug has a raised hand.
Who raised their hand?
Yeah. Hi. Lynn, I may have missed this, but if a plant species is already in pre, but you want to add your new assessment of that, perhaps for a different state or something, that's just you find the species and then you click add assessment.
Yeah, essentially if you click add assessment, the first thing it'll do is ask you for the plant. And then you type in the plant, it'll start to autofill plants that are in the database. And then down below that's where you indicate a region and your
Perfect.
name and so forth. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Good question.
And we do have a question from Michael Chamberlain now. He is asking if we're evaluating species and cultivars as well.
What was the last part? Sorry.
Evaluating species and or cultivars.
And cultivars, we will talk about that. Yeah, I will get right to that. Very good question. And the answer is yes. That's the short answer. Okay, so first step, answering pre-questions. So first step is the climate matching component of this. So this has to do with how suitable is the climate of the region you're evaluating it for to the plant. So what you'll see in the screen, the screening screen is as you're going through climate matching map, and you'll use the climate matching tool. Here's the link to it to generate a map, and it'll guide you through it. Then you actually you upload the map that it makes, and I'll show you on the next slide what that looks like. Okay, there we go. All right, so you have, you'll see your regional information within the climate matching menu. So you click climate match, go to the website, you follow the steps, you choose your state or region, and in your cases it will be state, or it should be state for where you are evaluating the plant. You create the PDF report. It just goes ahead, creates it for you. And then you go back into your pre-evaluation and you upload it. So you save it somewhere safe so you can refer to it as you go through the evaluation. And you'll use that PDF report in a few of the first questions. And again, there's guidance. All of these links will be live so that when you have this presentation yourself, you can click on the links and go ahead to the guidance. Okay, so this is what one of the pages of that climate matching PDF would look like for, in my case, I clicked California. And so this is essentially the pre-combined layer is the most helpful layer for you. So this is areas that match California's climate in terms of various components, hardiness, ecozones, and precipitation. And this was developed to be similar to other climate matching systems of USDA and so forth. And it may not be perfect, but it was shown to be effective for what we're doing and screening plants here. So it's a well thought out tool. And then this layer is really the best thing to use. So this is the map you'll really use in order to assess the plant.
In 2022, we updated the Climate Match tool so that you can now search GBIF data for a specific species of interest. For example, here I searched Lantana camera and overlaid it with the climate match of California. So you go ahead and select the species that you want from the search bar, and it shows you the occurrences that are recorded in the GBIF data. This appears as another layer over your climate match map. So after you've done that, you can go ahead and generate a PDF report as you would do before. And you will be able to download and save a copy of this climate match report with the GBIF data overlaid on the climate match map, making this part of the process easier than ever before. Now you can see you'll have a climate match report including the new GBIF data with the species occurrences, making climate match questions 4 through 6 much easier to answer than before.
Okay, so once you've uploaded it, and again, the system really guides you through these things, you go ahead and look at the first set of entries, which is, plant name, regional info, and then you upload that climate match PDF. And then that's when the pre-evaluations begin. And so a good suggestion is just to really save your work as you go, but the system will prompt you for that. And again, some links that'll cover pretty much everything we're talking about as well. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and look at the website together. Sharing my screen already, so I'm gonna get out of, there we go, escape, and go ahead and get out of the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay.
And just a note, while Lynn is bringing up her screen with the website, when you log in, you'll be able to view evaluations right now, but you won't be able to start an actual screening or an actual evaluation right now, not until after the training. Then you'll all be assigned screener roles.
Right. So when you log in, this is what you'll look at. I'm associated with various organizations. You could click, for instance, on our grant project and see information about it here, and the members, the other members of the group here. And then you could, so looking at evaluations, let's look at, one maybe I did, maybe it's this one. There we go. Way back in 2020 in the before times. So here we have an evaluation. So there's really two views, one's evaluation and one's edit. So if you are looking at evaluations, be mindful of what you're doing. So you just want to be looking, not editing for now. So if I go into, let's say, edit, just to show you what it sort of looks like as you're going through, I'm able to do that on my own evaluation. This is how they're grouped, the questions, 1 through 20 here. You could expand them all if you want, or you could hide them all. Each one has a drop down, and what you're going to do is answer the yes or the no. It automatically assigns the point. So really, the heart of what you're going to be doing is answering that, giving your confidence, backing up your answer, and then putting in your source. What's really good about this system is it'll give you really the instructions about what to do for each right there. So that's right there for you as well, and really helpful. The other key piece of information here is it'll tell you if the answer has to be answered or if it can be unanswered. Some questions you can have unanswered, others will default to no if there's no evidence for it. So pretty much throughout the system, it's a no until you have evidence, or it's unanswered until you have evidence. And that's generally how it works. So, okay, and so that's, this is just a look at what it looks like, the various sections of the evaluation. This will be totaling your pre-score, and all of this stuff will be automatically happening. You will need to probably make sure to click off who you're evaluating the plant for here. Lots of organizations that have been using this, and then you're going to go ahead and save as you're going. So, that's a very quick look at the system. All right, getting back to Zoom. Oh, let's see, my screen share, PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so moving right into the questions. So we're going to go through the 20 pre-questions. And then at the end, we're going to have a little, I think it's questions or a break. We'll see where we are on time. All right, so the first question, has the species or cultivar or variety become naturalized where it's not native? And this question has to do, you can look in the pre-glossary to find answers to what some of the vocabulary means. Most of you are very familiar with these terms, but you probably want to make sure that the terms align with what you think it does in this context. So cultivar or variety. So we are evaluating cultivars or varieties. I'll give you the rules in a bit for how to do that when it's a horticultural variety of a plant. But in general, has the species become naturalized where it's not native? Has it spread outside cultivation into areas other than disturbed, very disturbed areas such as a roadside? So if you see, oh, the plant naturalized in the compost heap or something, or the plant, even if they use the word naturalized, you might say, no, that's not naturalized according to this. It's a disturbed area. It's immediately on the roadside. It hasn't spread beyond. That's the qualification here. So on the left, we have basically roadside weed, and then we have a clearly naturalized plant. All right, question 2. So I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. And again, this is meant to be a fairly simple tool that you can move through quickly as well. And hopefully the answers are fairly straightforward once you can find the information. But please, again, you can put questions in the chat as we go through. And again, you have access to this PDF, which essentially spells out everything that I'm saying as well as the other cheat sheet we provided you, which might be a little bit more out of date, but I think it's really good the way it's laid out. Okay, so the second question has to do with using that climate matching component that you produced using the tool. So question 2, is the species noted as being naturalized in the US or world in a similar climate to where you are? So looking at Lathyrus latifolius, let's say I was evaluating it. I went into gbif.org. I saw, this is a map showing where it is region wide. It's kind of cool because they've actually put this into like a tile format, so you don't get too into the details of how many points are here or there, because we all know that there are some errors in this, but it generally shows, kind of the density of observations. So this is where it's present throughout the world. Some of this is native, some of this is not native area. You're concerned only with are these regions matched up to your region, or really like a Mediterranean type species. But that's an example of what you would do for a comparison. Okay, so here is the species invasive in the US or world? So now we're talking about invasiveness, which is being different than being naturalized. So to be invasive in does it cause economic or environmental damage? So here I have some photos of a plant causing economic or environmental damage. On the left is a schismus species in Joshua Tree National Park. What should be there at this time of year would be, either bare space or a bunch of native forbs or broadleaf species. And this is all covered by this invasive grass. So that's environmental damage. And here on the right, you have, I believe that's a pea and being outcompeted by some kind of ice plant. I think you're taking me that picture. So, so these are examples of economic or environmental damage. Now, importantly, to be invasive, you really need this noted in a resource that is credible, not just sort of being noted on like a noxious weed. So a noxious weed list, while legitimate, you also need detailed information supporting that. So if something's listed as noxious in advance of it coming to an area, or it's noxious due to for other reasons, that might not be good enough to say that it is invasive. So you have to make sure there's evidence for it being invasive in the US or world, and that's anywhere in the world. Okay, so now you have to put those two concepts together. Is this noted as being invasive in the world, US or world, in a similar climate? So now you actually have to find evidence that in one of these areas that match up, say in Portugal or South Africa that match up, that there is evidence that the species is invasive there. So there are some plants that actually are not invasive in any areas that actually match the climate. And that can be sometimes the case for Australian weeds, at least for California. So this one might just sort of naturalize in everywhere that's similar to the climate you're evaluating it for. In only certain situations it's invasive. So you have to find evidence of invasiveness in a climate that matches to say yes to this question. So a lot of these probably sound a little bit similar. So you really have to dial in on what exactly you're looking for with each. Okay, so this question has to do with invasiveness, but having to do with related species, which is a good indicator that that species could be invasive as well. So all of our favorite euphorbias, a lot of euphorbias that are invasive. And often by this time, you've been looking through the literature and you've actually seen other species in the genus that are invasive in a similar climate in the world. And so you're often able to really tick this off fairly quickly, saying yes. If you can find another species on those lists of invasive species, you click on it, you find out it's invasive. So hopefully that's straightforward. We all know how taxonomists like to switch up genera when needed for various reasons. And so you have to, the qualifier is really, is it a closely related species? So if it changed from euphorbia to something else, but it's clearly related to euphorbias, then that's a yes. So that makes sense. Okay. All right, so is the species found predominantly in a climate matching the species of concern? Okay, so here is the, sorry, I alluded to the 50% rule earlier, and I apologize for that. This is it predominantly in a climate of concern? So, and Jutta and Alex, please speak up if I do make an error, because again, these questions are very similar. Okay, so here's where you would look at the balance of where it occurs in the world in terms of what the climate match is. And so what I would do when I would be answering a question is I would detail areas that match in my answer, say, Southern Europe, Portugal, Italy matches using the climate tool, the pre-climate tool. However, Northern Europe, Scandinavia doesn't match, Nova Scotia doesn't match. Most of the areas in South America don't match the climate, et cetera. So this is a good way to think through while you're writing up your answer. So, and again, more than half kind of those ecozones that are in the PDF as well. So it sounds a little trickier than it is. It's usually, like I said, fairly straightforward. Okay, question 7. So does this plant displace native plants and dominate or overtop the plant community where it has established? And so on the left, we have some vinca, a vine that is known to really cover areas, especially riparian areas. So we have vinca. We also have on the right, I believe that is giant, not giant reed, the other one, Phalaris. Somebody will tell me. Giant, anyway, one of you knows this. So the key is with this is that you've seen that this information is coming from, reliable observations of field experts. So this could be a government report, noting in a state park, this species was overtopping and smothering the plant community. This could be in a formal description. This could be in a weed science book you might have talking about cases of this happening. So you really need specific information about this happening, not just generally and not just sort of hypothesizing that something could. So, okay. All right. So do we have any burning questions that we need to clarify so far?
Ron Vanderhoff said it might be Phragmites australis.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yep. Absolutely. Thanks. Okay, and we're gonna pause at the end of these as well. So, okay, here's a picture of a prescribed burn, but we were just looking for a picture of fire. So, what this is talking about is this plant noted as promoting fire and or changing fire regimes. So this is really looking for promoting large-scale fire, altering the historic fire regime. Simply being flammable is not enough to warrant a yes answer here. So you need evidence that this species has promoted fire in some area. This species requires fire to germinate, might be a piece of evidence. And as you're going through and finding evidence, you might just put in all the relevant evidence without writing, a term paper on it. Then that way you can support your answer as best you can. You really only need one reliable piece of information to say yes to a question, but you want to make sure that this is accurate. So really these are for plants that transform the plant community due to fire promotion. Often there is not specific answers to this question. It can be hard to find. Simply being on a fire-wise do not plant list isn't actually quite enough either. You really need evidence that it's done this. So that can be hard to find unless it's a really well-known plant. So that one I believe defaults to no, but again, each time check your guidance with the question. Okay, is this plant a health risk to humans and or animals or fish? Is a species, so these are really two sort of questions. So is it a health risk to animals? And then secondarily, has it been noted to impact grazing systems? And so this has to be, for the former, it has to be a reasonable likelihood that it would be ingested at a rate high enough to cause poisoning or death. So not just being listed on a poison control website, although that might be good information to put in your answer. It really has to be have evidence. So on the left, we have, maybe somebody could put in the chat, they know what this one is on the left that causes significant harm to humans in some way. Do we have a couple answers? What's the answer?
From Scott Anetto, we have hogweed.
Yes, a giant hogweed. Jutta sent me a very gruesome picture that I did not include here for the faint of heart, including myself, that shows dermatitis caused by this plant. So you really don't want to mess with this plant. So that would be an example of significant harm. And thank you to everyone who's weighed in on that. On the right, we have a grazing system. So for the grazing component of the question, this has to be, this is either something that really impacts, the cattle by consuming it, or you can say yes to this question if it is outcompeting the forage at such a rate that it would reduce pasture quality. So species that are not palatable and would replace the nourishing species at large scale, you can say yes to this question as well. That's an important component. Okay. All right. Does the plant produce impenetrable thickets, blocking or slowing movement of animals, livestock, or humans? On the left, we have arundo, all of our favorite plant. And that one is blocking passage of the folks that are trying to control it. So this is obstruct passage or access. This generally applies to vines, woody or tall species, or really densely growing spining plants. For instance, if it wasn't native, the teddy bear, Cholla cactus garden at Joshua Tree National Park. If you tried to walk through that, you'd have a bad time. And so that's really what you're looking for here. I think this is Japanese knotbite on the right, another example of something that's really prohibiting access. So let's see, yeah. All right. Okay, so does it prohibit movement? Sometimes you can tell this by, if you look at the height of the plant, it's an easy way to answer. So maybe it's only 5 inches tall and you can just say no to the question. All right, so we get into some botany here. So does this species reproduce and spread vegetatively? So this is reproduction without requiring seeds. So this is spreading asexually via plant organs, such as rhizomes, stolons, tubers, all of your favorite botany terms, corms, bulbs, bulblets, root sprouts, suckers. Here's a picture of a species reproducing right off the leaf, bulbs, I believe here. And then we have Joshua trees and a puppy and a child there for your, just to perk you up a little bit. So here we have some stump sprouting. So that species actually is able to, though native, reproduce via vegetative reproduction. Good places to find this information might be a horticulture website, or Plants Africa or Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center. Often you can find this fairly easily. One key to this question is that this cannot be, that it's able to be in the horticultural industry reproduced via cuttings. This has to be, again, a reasonable chance that it would do this naturally in a natural setting. Does this happen? So that should be kind of the qualifier you use as you go through. So further, not only can it reproduce vegetatively, if it can reproduce by naturally detached fragments, is it a common method of reproduction from this plant? So maybe it can do it, but is this really something that happens commonly? And is this something that really allows the plant to spread? And similar to the other question, is it really increasing numbers by vegetative means from detached fragments? So again, both of them apply to natural situations. This one saying, is this really frequently what happens with the species? So a little bit of subtlety there. Okay, does this plant commonly reproduce by viable seed? So we have some examples of plants that the answer would be no. So we have Aethel tamarisk on the left that primarily does not reproduce by seed. We have Arundo on the right that's primarily reproduces by vegetative means. And then we have a cultivar in the center, probably Panacetum citaceum, maybe rubrum or something. This one is probably the sterile variety that does not reproduce by seed. So that would be a no. You can, let's see. Yeah, so again, a reasonable and usual means of reproduction, not a rare event. Okay, does the plant produce copious viable seeds each year? And this one can be tough to find the answer to this question. Often I'm into Google Scholar and just trying to find, number of seeds per plant or number of flowers or something. And you can use flowers to kind of give you information about how many seeds might be there. You also might have to do a little bit of math and figure out, well, how many seeds does this have per flower? And how many flowers are on a branch? And looking at a barium specimen, I see, okay, an average plant seems to have at least 5, branches. And then you do the math. And is that 1,000 or not? And you use that as a cutoff. So you could, use biological characteristics. Maybe you have a production per unit area. This could be inferred. This is really meant to get at, prolific seeders. So is this plant able to set up in an environment and produce many, many more plants? That's the heart of the question. Okay. Oh, okay. So question 15, so let's say there's seeds produced by the species. Is there significant germination of seeds the next growing season with no requirement of an infrequent condition for the seeds to germinate or grow? So like a long dormancy period or a fire. So often you could find this, you might be able to find this in horticultural literature documenting seeds are able to be collected and germinated easily. That might be a good way to find this information. If folks are starting to say, oh, it's really difficult to germinate and we can't get it to germinate, and then you kind of look into the biology, oh, maybe it has a dormancy of some kind. So that would help you with that. So, okay. Sometimes Q, by the way, Q or barium or Q information, seed information database might give you some information there. So did this plant produce viable seed within the first 3 years for an herbaceous species, such as the one on the right, or 5 years for a woody species, such as that on the left? I believe this is calorie pear on the left. And I don't actually know what the time to maturity is on that one, but that's an example of a woody species for which you'd use the 5-year cutoff. So often you can maybe find the information, how long does it take to flower? How long does it take to fruit? You could probably find this information for most species that have been used in horticulture, because people are usually very interested in that. Time to maturity is a good term. And some of you are in the horticulture world and probably have other ways to find out this information. So how long does it take to produce viable seed? All right, question 17. Does it produce seed for greater than 3 months each year, or does seed production occur more than once a year? So some species might have several seasons in which they produce seed. So here we have CalFlora, which is a good resource for California. And it's a secondary site. So this is summarizing information from the primary literature, but it's a reliable site. And so this is listing species name and the range, et cetera. And then you have bloom period, and this is showing us how long it flowers. And you can use information about how long something takes to how long something flowers to answer this question. So if it flowers for greater than 3 months, you could say, yes, probably seeds for greater than 3 months as well, unless you have some other information that would say no. So that should be fairly, at least an easier one to find. I love these life history questions, the biology questions, that's my favorite. Yeah, so there might be, maybe a Jepson or Flora of North America might have information for you on this if it's in there, or else perhaps a botanical website from where the species is native that might indicate that. All right, so that's me and Joshua Tree being attacked by a cholla on the right. But this question is meant to pertain really to mammals, of which I am a mammal, or birds or domestic animals. So are the plant's propagules frequently dispersed, long distance by any of these means? And so with this one, you might see this species is readily taken by birds, which disperse the seeds in their droppings. That'd be a good indicator that would be a yes. You can also use life history information here to imply that this would be a yes. So if a species has burrs or hooked or barbed hairs, long awns, sticky sap, fleshy fruits, and again, this is a lot of this information is right in your table there, to disperse. So you're going to say yes or no, record the life history information you found, and cite your source for the information. Usually you wouldn't leave this one blank, and usually you can find that information, and it should be fairly obvious. If it's a fruit that looks really tasty for a kangaroo rat or something, or some kind of animal, it's probably dispersed by animals. Okay, are the plant's propagules or propagule seeds, fruit, ways in which it reproduces? I believe this would refer to both sexually and asexually. So is it frequently dispersed, long distance by wind or water, or the whole plant? So tumbleweed, for instance, this is the whole darn plant blowing across the landscape. So are they frequently dispersed greater than 100 meters? Pappus on seeds of asters. So actually this is a native aster on the right. You can see those would definitely get into the wind and blow away. And on the left, you actually have an invasive brome that is not really adapted for wind dispersal. And again, you're looking for adaptations particularly for water, even though this is not a tool to use for aquatic species. If the species is dispersed by water, and it's a terrestrial species, you'd use evidence, flotation devices, corky appendages. I will say a note on the wind issue, Samara seeds, such as from a maple, the ones that sort of twirl, that's not considered to be enough distance away from the parent plant to justify a yes. So it really has to be, out of the scene, out of the picture, dispersal 100 meters to say yes. So again, seed morphology or fruit morphology will help you with that question. Okay, and this is the last pre-question. So are the plant's propagules dispersed frequently via contaminated seed, agriculture, wildflower packets, equipment, vehicles, boats, or clothing, shoes? And so for that cholla picture, this would be a yes here because, I'm a human and I dispersed it. But this is particularly talking about anthropogenic means. We can, again, talk about, thank you, Ron, for the picture. And I did check Creative Commons licenses on all these. And so we're talking about burrs that might occur trail side, latch onto people, disperse that way. Puncture vine on the right that latches onto just about anything and disperses that way. And then we have a nice picture from Bob Case on the lower left of, I can't remember what species Jutta said it was, but something latching onto hiking socks.
Barbed goat grass, yeah.
Barbed goat grass, exactly. And then perhaps Savina just to the right of that, latching onto a shoe and dispersing. So, and the key is this a frequent dispersal mechanism? Is the plant really trying to do this? Is this really what is commonly dispersing it? So simply just being in the mud, it's sometimes in the mud on the trail side and people pick it up is not good enough for this. It has to have a real means of spreading this way. And simply being a weed of roadsides doesn't necessarily say that it spreads this way. Maybe it's just likes to be at the roadside as well. Okay, and so let's see, you've gone through these questions. And I guess it is time for questions. If we want to do a few questions and then a break. Do we have time for a break?
I think we have time. We should be on track for a break.
Okay. All right, so questions first, burning questions.
Yeah, we had a question from Marla Knight. She was asking, is supporting information documented in the assessment? Is there an area for us to attach a paper link or reference?
Okay, so I will get to how you cite references. References are required for all of the answers, but normally you're putting in the bibliographic information for it. So it might be, Missouri Botanic Garden, maybe written into the answer. And then below it, you have linked up the page from Missouri Botanic Garden that actually got you that information, or the PDF or the paper's citation information. So that you have entered it and you're going to link it to it. So it's entered that way. But there's no PDF actually associated with that. It's all just hyperlinks or citations.
Okay. And then Scott Anetto wanted to know, in relevance to question 19, did you say human activity accounts for this question 19? For example, vehicle and equipment by human activity or humans planning for horticultural trade?
Yes, let me, okay, let's see. I want to check my answer about horticulture on there. It should, this is question 19?
Yes.
Okay, so having to do with wind or water. Do you want to explain your question?
I think the one before, I think the wind and water was maybe the last one. The one before that was the one, I think that was regarding the spread by birds or mammals or other domestic animals.
Okay, 18, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was that 18?
Yep. Okay. Yep, that one is focused on wildlife. That is, yeah. So 18 has to do in. Maybe I made an error by putting in a picture of me in that one. That one is primarily having to do with if you take humans out of the landscape, how would it spread? So burrs or attachments that way. So that's I'll just go back to it so we can put it into our memory. Okay, so assuming I was not there, I'm an example of a coyote or something, right? But it's attached to me, and I'm a rabbit, and it's attached. So this one does not have to do with anthropogenic means. Yes, primarily animals. The one that is this one. So question 20, if it did the same thing but is attaching to people, and people are dispersing it, yes. So often probably it's yes for both if it's something like a cholla. So, but really focusing on humans with the last one. I hope that answers your question. We'll have more time for questions at the end as well.
I think
we did have
go ahead.
one more question. Do we have time?
Yes, we have time.
Okay. Michael Chamberlain wanted to know, would we be going to herbarium specimens to ascertain some of these answers?
I think it's a good place to go. I think, there's so much online now. You're going to use everything you can that is a reliable source, that's documented, that can be found again. So that's the key, is if we don't really want you running to the herbarium yourself and taking a picture because we have no method to cross-reference that. But if you can find an herbarium photo online that you can link, or it's in a listing of a species, probably so, or maybe they have a description. Alex, I don't know if Alex has a different opinion about citing herbarium specimens or anything like that.
No, I think that's completely appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I would say is, just noting, yeah, herbarium specimens noted, the bulbs or whatever it is you're trying to support for the answer, and looked at, a specimen, and then you'd have the link in the source. So
And you could add the specimen number. That would
Yeah.
be helpful. Then it
yeah.
really helps you.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know if we've said this to you. This is really meant to be, plants are meant to be screened fairly rapidly using reliable information that you can find easily, and actually done, if you're a fast screener, you might be able to do it in about 2 hours, which might sound incredible at this point. And the first ones will take longer than that. But once you're familiar with where to find the information, like I said, you really need one reliable fact for each question. And if you can find those, you might be able to do it 2 to 3 hours. So.
Cool. I think we might be ready for, there is one more. Should we take this question in the chat, or should we
I don't know.
go ahead and do our break now?
Where you at?
I
Yeah,
think
Marla wants to know which question would relate to a species that is spread via horticultural introductions.
Well, it would depend on the specific. So if it is included in wildflower packets that are commonly carried around and spread to wildland areas, yes. But in general, unless I'm not thinking about it, I don't think that just being a horticultural plant would get you a yes. Well, because it's meant to screen horticultural plants, right? So it really would have to be, I'm going to get back to you about that, just to be I'm totally positive I'm answering that right. But it wouldn't see, I don't think that, that's not enough. I'm wondering about the situations where it would be enough. So let me check during the break.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we will come back at what, 2:12?
Okay, so you're welcome to mute and
or we can,
whatever you want.
whoever would like to chit chat, because that's also a possibility with the other
I'll probably
members of the
say,
group here. You can unmute.
yeah.
All right, we'll start our break.
So I wanted to answer, assuming we're back, briefly Marla's question. So question 20 is really meant to get at, and because again, this is meant to assess horticultural species as well. So we really don't want to just broad sweeps say, okay, well, it's planted in 26 different places in California or something, and therefore it could, just launch away from all of those places. We want to be conservative about what we're calling invasive. So does the species frequently disperse by attachment to equipment, vehicles, boats, clothing, or shoes? So not just the classic, propagule pressure by being everywhere. It's sort of, you actually have to have a way to disperse the propagule. So if it's a burr, it attaches and it's always spread off site, that's a yes. But if it's just planted, then no. So I hope that's helpful. Or if people are frequently, I had that on mute, I swear. People are frequently taking it out into the wildland and planting it for some reason, maybe a yes, but really you have to have a attachment is the qualification. Okay. All right, so moving on. And again, we're gonna have a time for questions at the end. We have about 20 slides left, and at the end, we're going to talk a little bit more about next steps and when assignments are due. So anyone that might have missed that, we're going to talk about that again. So now we're going to talk about some of the, the various components of actually doing the evaluation itself. So first of all, the summary tab. So this is not a summary slide. This is talking about the summary tab. And I'll try to show you right here what I mean by that, because it's maybe a little confusing. Let me see. Okay, let's go into an evaluation again. This is a, maybe not this one. I think that's a practice one. Oh, I had a summary. Okay, how about this one then? I think I do that one as well. Okay, evaluation summary. So right at the top, after you've gone through, you've listed, when you did it and, all that. You're basically finished. You've checked your answers, and then you produce some evaluation summary. So that's what I mean by summary tab. Okay. So this is to highlight the most important information. Let's say you just want to know, somebody just wants to know, oh, pre-ranked this really high. I wonder why. They could go and just read this and be done. It's just just a place to put that really highlights the best information, almost like an abstract, and emphasizing anything that's important for a reviewer to know also, such as reviewing a cultivar. So that's something you would include that information there. If relevant, you could make a note about information located. Maybe, oh, I really couldn't find anything about this plant. There was really nothing in the literature about it, or, or there was a lot, something like that, if it's relevant. Don't introduce any new answers to the questions here. Just use the space to qualify. Well, I really wasn't sure about this answer. That really should be in the evaluation itself. So you do your best to quantitatively, make all the information you get quantitative. This is just a place, like I said, to summarize it. Okay, so evaluating cultivars, which can be done with the tool. When you're doing this, first of all, the plant is entered and you're listing it as a cultivar with the name that it's been given. Is it significantly different from the plant in certain characteristics, the parent plant? And so seed set, plant size, something it's been bred for that also is significant for the evaluation questions we've talked about. So maybe it now just, it has giant bubbles on it and it can disperse in the wind or something. That would be relevant to the evaluation. It now produces 50 times as many seeds or 50 times as many fruits. So something about, maybe flower color, unless it's ecologically relevant, probably doesn't matter. So in that case, if it's not really significantly different, you can use the parent data to evaluate it, the parent species. You would set the screener confidence to medium, however, for any question that I'm going to get to confidence. Any questions you use the parent information for, and note that you're using the parent data. If you do have information about the cultivar, then you would address it for the cultivar. You might even put in also the parent species is this way. This cultivar that I'm evaluating now is this way, just to make it really, really clear. So it can be done, and it has been done successfully. So I hope that makes sense. So here's an example of a cultivar in the system. And so this is the name of the cultivar. So this one differs in leaf color. Based on this, this was the evaluation used information from the parent species to, for instance, the native range and where it's found, in the world. In here is where you put plant information. Remember, at the top of the evaluation, you have evaluation summary, which again, you do last, information, and then plant information. And this is where you put that. So that's right in there. And you can put a link in here. For whatever reason, the link was dropped. Oh, because there isn't a source tab for that. So the link was dropped right in. So that's a good reason to do that. So, okay, so more about sources. So a lot of you have access, I heard, to academic literature, which is helpful. So if you aren't affiliated with an institution, a government, or academic institution, you may not have access to what's called paywalled literature, which is literature that is the publisher holds it until people pay for it. Please don't pay for literature. Worst case scenario, you can often actually email the author and they will just send you the PDF if you need to. But if you have access to a virtual private network or library that gives you access to paywalled literature, then you could use things like ISI Web of Science or Google Scholar to find information. We have a link here to sources frequently used in pre-evaluations. Many of these are not academic literature. And I have a list coming up, maybe on the next slide, on things like USDA GRIN, USDA plants, Q, a lot of things that are not, you don't have to have any kind of academic affiliation for. There's no requirement to upload a PDF or even save it. I would personally save the literature I'm using so that I have it for reference. But essentially, you're going to enter the citation. So again, reliable information. It could be in a book. It could be online. It could be within a horticulture website or a government report. And you'll start to see the types of places you can find this information. And then as an option, you can set up Zotero Reference Manager. The key is that it needs to export information in BibTeX format, BIBTEX. And there is, of course, a pre-tool or pre-tip sheet to tell you how to do that. But just in summary, I'll show you. So there's sources linked to, go ahead.
And one quick comment that Dia made about references, also to check ResearchGate, that they oftentimes have their reference, the literature uploaded, the actual paper. So that's super helpful if you don't have direct access.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good. So this is what an answer might look like. So this is an answer, somebody wrote this answer to question 3. They put in the information they used to say that it's invasive. This plant, they, put in the information about, next to each statement. There's even a personal communication, which could be used if it is an expert in the field. And then they cited it here. So this is what the references look like. So when you enter your information, you click reference. So under references, add items. So you add item, and it goes to a new screen to help you find that item. The item might already be in the database. Jody Tomaso's book might be in there already, or it could be something that you need to enter. So check first, see if it's in there. Some of these things are listed already. Some of them are general sites, some of them are the specific page. Australia has some fantastic websites about invasive species, so often you can find those there. But so go ahead and add items. And then this is what you will see. Actually, before I show you that, I'm just going to show you. So this is, primary and secondary sources. Again, many of you know this stuff already. So you might see, for instance, on CABI, which is also a great place to find information. This is a secondary source. So it's taking information from various places and listing it here. You probably only need one of these statements. So you could probably, if you needed to say something about reduces native ungulate use of habitat, and here's a citation. If you can access that citation, then use that instead of listing CABI as the source of the information. However, if it's an authority and it didn't have a citation, then you could use CABI in this specific page as the source of that information because it's an authority. So it shouldn't be too much of a judgment call with that. I don't know if we have questions on that. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure that I have the, okay. Use Zotero. Okay. So let me make sure I didn't skip a slide here. Okay. 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 Oh, there we go. All right. So adding information. So adding sources. So here's a link to the sources frequently used in pre, but there are a lot. And this source page was probably created 5 years ago or so. Potentially it's been updated, but you might find new places to find information. So these are some places you might find general species information. They're also good for taxonomy, but these are other places to find taxonomic information for the plant to make sure you have that correct. Invasive and regulation status. So again, you can't simply use a noxious listing to say that something's invasive, but that website might have information indicating that characteristic. So invasive.org, PEER, you can find information in the poison control web pages or plant lists. Again, that seed information database I found very helpful to say that something germinates really easily. And then of course, primary literature. Those small studies a student did in Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic to, look at one species. Some of this information can be fairly obscure. I'll just sort of, I'll tell you that. And then again, of course, botanic gardens are excellent sources of this information as well. So this is, once you've clicked that link, add source, and you really need to add the source. This is where you'll enter the information. So you'll enter the title, you'll put the publication type and authors. Sometimes they're already in there. You can go ahead and select them. You can just start to type and it'll fill it in if they're in there. You try to fill it as much as you can, but please, you don't need to spend hours on this. The keys are really, title, authors. If you can put in that abstract, that's great. Publication information, basically what you'd need for a citation is what you need here. So that's what you'll be doing by hand if you do not use Zotero or another reference manager to produce that BibTeX blurb of text. It's possible. It does take a little more time. So you might think about investing the time in Zotero so you don't have to do that. So this is what the process looks for me if I'm using Zotero. So for instance, I'm at a web page here on the web, and here's, the citation or the paper that I want to cite. And then I have a little, tool there for Zotero built in. Click that, and then you have to have Zotero open. So I have it open on my Mac, and here it is. Okay, it puts it right into my list there. And then, I say control, copy reference, copy bibliography, whatever. And then that screen that I was showing you earlier, right up here, just above where we're looking at, there is a box. It says BibTeX, and I control V, Command V, and the blurb into there, and I say populate using BibTeX, and then all of those fields are then filled out. So that's an option for you as well. If you can, we do have a video we can point you at if you want to try to use Zotero to fill it out, because then you don't have to fill out each of those spaces by hand. It's a bit easier, and you might find you like it. So that's what Zotero is about. Again, not required. So we will have some support available, by the way, after this webinar. We've planned a time to be available to answer questions if you guys want to have some more technical help. Okay, so back to the evaluation. So we've covered references and how to put those in. Confidence. So confidence isn't just sort of, how you're feeling about it that day. Oh, I'm feeling great today. Everything's high, So we want to have, we actually have a quantitative way to evaluate this. So do you have highly credible evidence, peer-reviewed scientific publications saying this plant produces 800 seeds per year, and that's the maximum, whatever it is. That's a piece of information you got from a highly credible source. High, and believe me, high, this is all, this is good enough. Other published material reports, other peer-reviewed documents, a conference abstract, something like that. So something that is published and documented. Medium, observational information, professional might have given you this information, or is the parent information for a cultivar. So that's, very high, or medium. And so that's probably you found pretty good information about the species on any of those counts. Low goes, you find some indication of something and you put in that information. I wouldn't go too deeply into like an anonymous post on a gardening forum per se, but you found some information, but it's not quite good enough to warrant a yes. So the question has to go to a no answer on that. And then very low, generally just don't bother. You don't have any information, leave blank. So again, you could use some inferences there, and you can assign confidence using that as well. So that's confidence. And that affects, what ends up happening with your score. I think we have to have 80% confidence or something. There is some qualification for confidence that needs to be met for the screen to be valid. And in general, so in progress, again, once you're complete, you've done the summary, you've checked it over. In progress is where you're at. And then once you are done, then you click submitted. And that's pretty much where you're going to get to here. There's an optional step at the end, depending on what your organization wants to do about having, review and marking everything as fixed and really making it ready for the public, and that would be completed. So that's the optional step. If it is reviewed, and some of you might want to be reviewers on this, then the way PRE handles that is called issues. So if you input an issue, we were not going to go over this in depth here, by the way, but essentially you have an issue with the way something was answered for some reason, or some additional information, there's an issue, and there's a whole process for how that's dealt with. So reviewers add issues, and then the screeners or the evaluator addresses them. And the point is to, increase the integrity of the evaluation and inform you about information that maybe you didn't have. So that's helpful. And perhaps Jutta or Alex could talk more about the review process if need be today or another time. But the idea is to really make these, increase the integrity. And that's all coordinated by a data manager. So this is what it looks like, in the end. So these are, again, so something's in progress. These are submitted. This is the number of questions answered. So they answered all 20. And usually, you can usually answer all of them, but again, not always. Screener confidence, so that has to do with what you marked: very high, high, medium, low. And then issues, that's where that's coordinated. So there might be an issue brought up by a reviewer there. But again, that's coordinated by a separate process. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over some tips and help. So what's available to you after this meeting today, both the PowerPoint and again, hopefully the video, the recording, as soon as we can get it, will be available to you. Then we have within the PRE system a bunch of help guides. So these are all linked with the new PRE website. So if you do have, for some reason, old PRE links, please update that to pretool.org using one of these links in this. There's the YouTube series, which is currently just a couple of videos, but we hope to add this one as well. FAQ pages and frequently used sources. Those are all very helpful. That's the help tab. And then again, the how-to documentation, extensive in the help menu within the PRE tool. Of course, we'll have a way for you to ask us about this as well, but there's lots and lots of help pages. Even I will point out for the reviewers, so review process as well. So some tips from me, from us, just be patient. So this first review that we're going to have you do, it'll be a little slow because you're still finding the places to find the information and getting your personal confidence up, and then finding on the web page where to put all of this in. But in general, try to complete plants in one sitting is my advice. The first one might be a challenge, but because that way, you remember, oh, it was, Gates et al. 2014 that had that information. No, it's Missouri Botanic Garden that had that information. Cal Flora had that information. That's on the top of your brain when you're completing it. So I think it's nice to do it all in one go, but do it according to your style. You can find Creative Commons licensed photos on iNaturalist and other places. That's if you're adding a plant. Generally, if you're just evaluating, you don't have to worry anything about photos. It's already been done for you for the plant, and you're just adding an evaluation. But if you do need to add a plant in the future, you find a licensed photo to do so. And actually, the system guides you through that and makes sure you have the right license. I often operate with two browsers or two windows, one with the PRE website system evaluation, and then one with my literature search, so that I don't accidentally close a window. So I actually use Chrome and Firefox at the same time, so you don't close them. Bookmark good sites, of course, as you find them, maybe make a folder. And then as you're entering sources, which I showed you, you can actually associate the plant name right with the source, and it's just a little easier to enter. You'll see. And then, good old Control F I found very helpful. To find the plant name on a page, or find seed set or time to maturity or something. Control F or Command F will find you. That search and find is really helpful. Get it done in a hurry. So, okay, so we're going to talk, questions about this, and then we're going to talk about setup and next steps.